When a person first begins to hurt themselves, it rarely feels like a dramatic choice. It does not arrive with thunder or a declaration. It often begins quietly, in moments of loneliness, confusion, or unbearable inner pressure. A person sits alone, carrying thoughts that feel too heavy, emotions that feel too chaotic, and a sense of being trapped inside their own mind. The pain inside has no clear language, no shape that can be explained easily to another human being. And so, the person finds a way to convert invisible pain into something visible, controllable, and immediate. Carl Jung believed that whenever a human being engages in a destructive behavior, it is not because they love destruction, but because something inside them is desperately seeking expression, release, or transformation. The act itself is not the true desire. The true desire is wholeness. The true desire is relief. The true desire is to feel real again. Jung's work teaches that the psyche is not an enemy. Even its darkest impulses exist for a reason. When someone harms themselves, the unconscious is speaking in a distorted language. It is saying, "Look at me. Something inside you is wounded. Something inside you has been ignored for too long." If you try to silence this voice with shame, punishment, or force, the voice grows louder. But if you learn to listen, truly listen, a different path opens. Imagine a person who has spent years trying to be strong for everyone else. They learned early that showing pain leads to rejection, ridicule, or abandonment. So they built a mask, a polite mask, a functional mask, a smiling mask. Underneath this mask, an entire world of fear, anger, grief, and unmet needs quietly grew. Jung called this hidden part of us the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is simply everything we were told not to be. Everything we learned to hide in order to survive. When the shadow is ignored, it does not disappear. It finds indirect ways to express itself. Sometimes it emerges as self-sabotage, sometimes as addiction, sometimes as explosive anger, sometimes as self-harm. Not because the person wants to die, but because a part of them wants to be seen. To hack the mind in Jungian terms does not mean to dominate it. It means to change your relationship with it. It means shifting from, "I am broken," to "something in me is asking for attention." This single shift alters everything. Picture a person sitting in their room late at night. The urge to harm themselves rises like a wave. Their chest feels tight. Their thoughts race. Their body feels unbearable. In the old pattern, they would obey the urge automatically. But now, something different happens. They pause, not because the urge vanished, but because they have learned a new internal dialogue. They say silently, "A part of me is in pain right now. I am willing to listen." This is the beginning of individuation, Jung's central idea of psychological growth. Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, not just the socially acceptable ones. When you treat the urge as a message instead of an order, its power weakens. You no longer identify with it. You observe it. You become the witness. Jung believed that consciousness itself is healing. The moment you bring awareness to an unconscious pattern, it begins to transform. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually. So the person begins to ask gentle questions. What am I actually feeling right now? What happened today that made me feel small, worthless, abandoned, or unsafe? What am I afraid to admit to myself? These questions are not interrogations. They are invitations. Often, beneath the urge to harm is a simpler truth. I feel unloved. I feel invisible. I feel powerless. I feel like I don't matter. Self-harm becomes a way to create a sensation that temporarily overrides emotional numbness, or a way to punish oneself for perceived failures, or a way to regain a sense of control. Understanding which function self-harm serves in your psyche is essential, because once you know the function, you can find a healthier way to meet the same need. If the need is to feel something, then safe sensory experiences can be introduced. Holding ice, taking a cold shower, intense physical exercise, strong scents, loud music, deep breathing that shakes the chest. These are not replacements in a mechanical sense. They are bridges. They allow the nervous system to discharge energy without damage. If the need is to punish oneself, then we explore where this inner judge came from. Jung often spoke about the internalization of parental and societal voices. Many people carry an inner critic that is not truly theirs. It is a borrowed voice. a voice that once served to keep them safe by encouraging compliance. But now it has become a tyrant. To hack this pattern, the person begins to separate from the voice. They notice, there is a voice in me that says I am worthless, not I am worthless. This grammatical shift is powerful. It creates distance. The voice becomes an object of awareness rather than an absolute truth. Jung would encourage dialogue with this voice. Not submission, not suppression, but conversation. Why do you speak this way? What are you trying to protect me from? When did you first appear? Often, the inner critic reveals itself as a frightened protector. It believes that by being harsh, it can prevent rejection or failure. When you acknowledge this, the relationship changes. You no longer see yourself as broken. You see yourself as divided. Healing, then, is not self-improvement. It is self-reconciliation. Another crucial Jungian idea is the concept of archetypes. Within every human psyche live universal patterns such as the wounded child, the warrior, the caregiver, the wise old one. A person trapped in self-harm is often identified almost entirely with the wounded child archetype. This part feels small, helpless, and overwhelmed. But other archetypes also exist within them, even if they feel inaccessible. The warrior is the part that can endure discomfort without surrendering to it. The caregiver is the part that can offer kindness to oneself. The wise one is the part that can observe life with perspective. Hacking the mind means consciously activating these dormant archetypes. When the urge arises, the person imagines the warrior standing beside the wounded child. Not yelling, not shaming, simply saying, I will stay with you. You do not have to go through this alone. They imagine the caregiver wrapping the wounded child in warmth, perhaps through a blanket, a warm drink, gentle touch on the arms, or soothing words. They imagine the wise one whispering, this feeling will change. It always does. You have survived before. These images are not childish fantasies. Jung viewed imagination as a direct bridge to the unconscious. The psyche responds to symbols more powerfully than to logic alone. Over time, the person begins to notice patterns. Certain triggers reliably precede the urge. Maybe it is rejection, maybe criticism, maybe exhaustion, maybe loneliness. Awareness turns chaos into data. Data creates choice. Choice is freedom. Another core idea in Jungian psychology is that what we resist persists. If you declare war on your urges, you strengthen them. If you approach them with curiosity, they soften. Instead of saying, I must never feel this way again, the person learns to say, I am allowed to feel this, and I am not required to act on it. This distinction is subtle but revolutionary. Feelings are waves. Actions are choices. You cannot always control which waves arise. You can learn to surf. The person begins building rituals that anchor them to life. Simple, repeatable behaviors that signal safety to the nervous system. Morning sunlight, drinking water slowly, writing a few honest sentences in a notebook, walking outside, touching a tree, breathing deeply for 2 minutes. These small acts accumulate. Jung emphasized that the psyche seeks meaning. When a person feels meaningless, self-destruction becomes more tempting. Not because they want to die, but because they cannot find a reason to live. Meaning does not have to be grand. It can be as simple as, I will stay alive to see who I become. Or, I will stay alive to protect the part of me that never had protection. Or, I will stay alive to create something, even if I don't know what yet. Over time, the person may realize that self-harm was never the enemy. It was a signal flare, a desperate attempt by the psyche to regulate overwhelming states. When they learn better regulation strategies, the behavior loses its purpose. Jung also spoke about the importance of confronting existential suffering. Life includes pain. No human escapes this. Trying to build a pain-free existence is a trap. The real work is building a psyche strong enough to hold pain without turning it inward destructively. Strength, in this sense, does not mean hardness. It means flexibility, the ability to bend without breaking. The person begins practicing emotional labeling. Instead of, I feel terrible, they get more specific. I feel disappointed. I feel ashamed. I feel lonely. Naming emotions reduces their intensity. The brain shifts from raw limbic activation to prefrontal processing. Science now confirms what Jung intuitively understood. As weeks and months pass, something subtle changes. The urges still appear sometimes, but they no longer feel like commands. They feel like signals. The person has built a relationship with themselves. They trust that they can survive emotional storms. They also begin to externalize their inner world in healthier ways. Art, music, writing, talking to someone safe. Movement. Creation is the opposite of self-destruction. Jung believed that creativity is a primary pathway to individuation. The person might start drawing abstract shapes that match their feelings, or writing raw, unfiltered journal entries, or composing music that captures their inner chaos. These acts give form to the formless. They turn suffering into expression. Another shift occurs. The person stops asking, "What is wrong with me?" and starts asking, "What happened to me?" This change introduces compassion. It acknowledges that many self-destructive patterns originate in early experiences of neglect, invalidation, or trauma. You were not born wanting to hurt yourself. You learned it as a coping strategy, and anything learned can be unlearned. Jung believed that healing is not linear. There will be setbacks. There will be days when the person feels like they have made no progress at all. These moments do not erase growth. They are part of it. They start to feel a faint sense of agency, a feeling they may not have felt since childhood. I can influence my inner world. That realization is transformative. Over time, the urge to self-harm loses its emotional charge. It becomes a distant echo rather than a scream. The person may still remember their past, but it no longer defines them. They understand something profound. They were never broken. They were wounded. And wounds can heal. Jung believed that within every human being exists a self, a deeper organizing center that strives toward balance and integration. Even in the darkest periods, this self is working quietly in the background, guiding the person toward growth, often through suffering. When someone chooses to stop harming themselves, they are not just stopping a behavior. They are choosing to enter a relationship with their own soul. They are choosing to say, "I am worth understanding." And that choice, repeated again and again, slowly builds a life that no longer requires destruction as a language. Not because pain disappears, not because life becomes easy, but because the person has learned how to stay with themselves. And that is the deepest form of hacking the mind. It is not control. It is communion. A quiet, steady commitment to remain alive, curious, and open, even when everything inside wants to collapse. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is a human one, and it is enough. Thanks for watching. Please like and share this video.